You know those places that just feel like they've always been there? The local shop, the post office, they're just part of the fabric of a place. But what happens when one of those institutions, one that served millions of people every single day, just vanishes? Today, we're going to dig into the incredible 50-year story of a supermarket that was so much more than just a place to buy your groceries.
So just try to picture this for a second. We're talking about a retail empire of almost 6,000 stores. Yeah, 5,939 to be exact. It's stretched into cities and towns all across 63 different regions. I mean, this was the biggest chain in the country, and it wasn't even close. But this isn't some success story about endless growth. Nope. This story has a much, much different ending.
Because after more than half a century, every single one of those stores shut its doors. For good. The whole thing just stopped existing. So the huge question is, how on earth does a national institution this massive just disappear? Well, to figure that out, we've got to go back to the very beginning. And the story starts all the way back in 1971. It didn't start as a business, really. It started as a promise made to the people of Pakistan. This was the Utility Stores Corporation, or the USC for short. And it was a company owned by the state with a really specific government-backed mission. Sell the absolute essentials, food, household stuff, to everybody, but at prices lower than the regular market. And how did they do that? Well, the government was kicking in money to keep those prices down. And just listen to the mission statement itself. It wasn't just about being cheap. The whole point was to provide clean, graded, hygienically fit goods. This was a really noble idea, right? It was aimed squarely at helping the country's poorest people get their hands on quality, everyday things they needed to live. Okay, so let's get into how this promise went from just a small idea into this gigantic nationwide operation. The journey is pretty wild when you look at it. I mean, it started out so small in 1971, just taking over 20 little shops. But from there, it absolutely exploded, growing to that unbelievable peak of nearly 6,000 stores. And then, bam, in 2025, it all just stops. A whole 54-year journey from a handful of stores to a national icon, and then gone. And let's just pause for a second to really grasp the scale here. Because this wasn't just about buildings. This was about people. We're talking over 14,000 employees, operations that covered 63 different regions. The USC wasn't just a store. It was a huge economic engine and a major employer, woven right into the country's DNA. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Because making good on that noble promise, well, it came with a price tag. A very, very big one that just couldn't be paid forever. And this number is really the heart of the whole problem. Over 15 billion rupees in losses that have piled up over the years. I mean, think about it. When you sell things for less than they cost you, day after day, year after year, you're digging a hole that just gets deeper and deeper. So you can see this massive conflict brewing, right? The very soul of the USC, its entire reason to exist, was to sell cheap stuff to help people. But that amazing mission created a financial black hole that the government was just throwing money into. The promise and the price were on a total collision course. And, a collision course like that can only end one way. It led to a really tough, but maybe inevitable decision from the very top. So, how did the end finally play out? Well, the end came fast. It started with a directive straight from the Prime Minister's office. That led to an official decision by the USC's own board of directors. And then that was it. On July 31st, 2025, after 54 years, the lights went out for the last time at all 5,939 stores. The government was pretty direct about why they did it. This was a move to try and fix the country's huge fiscal deficits, which is basically a fancy way of saying the government was spending way more money than it was taking in. This wasn't just a one-off thing either. It was part of a much bigger plan to fix or get rid of state-owned companies that were just bleeding money. So, here we are, 54 years, thousands of stores, and billions of rupees in losses later. What do we make of the Utility Stores Corporation? What's the takeaway here? This right here really shows you the two sides of the coin. It's like the USC had a split personality. On one hand, it was an absolute lifeline. It served the poorest people, it gave them access to good quality essentials, and it became the biggest store network in the country. But on the other hand, it was this massive financial weight dragging down the economy and making the government's money problems worse. And the crazy thing is, both of those things were completely true at the exact same time. Maybe the simplest way to wrap up this whole 50-plus-year story is just this. For millions and millions of people, for decades, the USCZ was a promise the nation kept. But in the end, it was a promise with a price tag that the country just couldn't afford to pay anymore. And that leaves us with this huge, fundamental question, one that goes way beyond just one supermarket chain in Pakistan. How do you balance a really noble mission to help people who need it most with the cold, hard math of financial reality? It's a massive challenge, and honestly, it's one that governments all over the world are still trying to figure out.